the way you get known is you be helpful, I think. I really truly believe that. Be helpful. Help the people understand your point of view. Help them to understand how to enact whatever it is that you're teaching them.
Welcome to the Content 10X Podcast, the show where content creators learn how to harness the power of content repurposing. And now, your host, Amy Woods.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Content 10X Podcast. This week is a guest interview and I have Matt Pierce who is joining me today. Now, Matt is the Learning and Video Ambassador from TechSmith Corporation, and he has created videos for learning and marketing for over a decade. He's the lead behind TechSmith Academy and Camtasia Certification Program and the host of the Visual Lounge. Now, we're going to be talking a lot more about that in this episode. It focuses on creating better images and videos and how they can be used in business for learning and communicating. Now, Matt has been a speaker at multiple learning and development focused and marketing conferences, both in the US, UK, Germany, and of course, recently as well, digitally. TechSmith is behind some awesome tech such as Camtasia, Snagit, Screencast, Audio. Such a great company. Matt is such a great person. Really looking forward to this interview. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Amy, thank you so much for inviting me.
We absolutely love working with you guys on the Visual Lounge. It was an honor actually to be on it recently as well. So thank you for having me on. And we're going to kind of dig into that and so much more. So it's great to have you. But first, what did I miss from the intro? Is there anything that I should have said that I didn't?
No, it was super well done. And I think it encapsulates quickly the things that I do. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a long time. And, it's exciting to see the progress video has made in the last 10, 15 years. I think we've come a long way in opportunities, and I'm excited to be on kind of that journey, helping other people to see that value as well.
Oh, you really do help people, the content that you create and what you're doing with TechSmith Academy and everything. It's absolutely fantastic. So we first met you guys when you reached out to us about the Visual Lounge and you were looking for some support with, the managing and the repurposing and the content thereafter. And it's been a great journey that we've gone on with you guys. And we've just loved seeing the Visual Lounge come to life and everything that you're doing with it. Could you just tell anyone listening who hasn't heard of Visual Lounge? Many people will, and the millions of listeners that you get every single week, but just explain a bit about what that show is and what you do with the Visual Lounge.
Yeah, so let me go back just to give a little context. So when the pandemic hit, we had this immediate need where we said we need to reach out to people. Events are being canceled. We don't have kind of some of the same touch points that we had. I mean, we have emails and kind of our typical marketing stuff, but we felt this kind of like desire to get out information, particularly about communicating remotely, because everyone all of a sudden found themselves working from home and different challenges, and all of a sudden you couldn't go into the office and communicate. And we said, well, let's start live streaming every week and just start sharing really good best practices just to help people. And as we did that, we said, oh, hey, this is really great content, but we're only ever getting it onto YouTube as a live stream. So what can we do? And we had been kicking around the idea of a podcast for probably a couple of years. I'd kept, every once in a while I'd drop the kind of the hint, like, we should do a podcast. We should do a podcast. And I'd done some podcasts on my own, kind of personal podcast. One about, like, I called it the Backstory Project. It was like this interview, like, how'd you get to where you are today? I started this really crazy one that was called 5 Trainers in a Car, which was literally getting people in a car at a conference and driving around and recording the conversation. And so I had experience with podcasts, but it was just like, we knew we needed to do something. We said, this is a great opportunity. And so out of what we were doing a live stream that didn't have a name, we were just going live, is we said, let's turn this into our first part of our podcast premise, is that we're going to do a couple things. We're going to interview people that are smart, wise experts in their area about, usually we're going to tie it into creating images, creating visuals, because that's what our company tools do. And then we also said, let's provide other kind of informational type topics. Like, we might talk about how to record better audio, or record an audio for first workflow for your videos, because those are things that we don't create tutorials about that process. And we wanted to make sure we're covering those, and we could have some organic conversations. We could take questions, which we really think is kind of a nice piece to go live, is you get audience interaction otherwise. And when we said, well, let's this is like, well, it's a big investment to do the work. How do we make sure we get the most out of it? And that's why we wanted to work with you, is because it's like, if I'm going to do this every week and it's only ever going to be just a video on YouTube, that's okay. But we saw the potential, that content and the value there, and said, let's really just blow this up and make it so much more. And it's been really awesome.
Yeah, it was a big decision, I guess, to do live. So to actually go forward and do a live stream. What was the thought process there? I'm sure you were playing around with, should we pre-record these videos or should we go live? So why did you decide to go the live route?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that I think we still kind of sometimes question whether it's the right or the best decision. But one of the big drivers is it puts it on the calendar. It is a hard, firm date of saying we are going to do this, without a huge commitment, right? Like, it's not like I'm trying to batch 12 of these things together to do them all and get them done, and then I can sit for a couple of weeks. It's like if I just go live every week, I have the habit. I know when it's going to be. I can plan that out, kind of all the other activities around that, and it forces us. The other thing is, we weren't super concerned about it being polished perfect, right? Like, we didn't have to have something that was absolutely the best and super high quality. We wanted something that felt authentic. It was a real conversation, and so that way we were like, even at the beginning, we might start and then we pause and stop because we made a mistake. Well, we just say, like, if we make a mistake, we're just going to press forward. We know it's yeah, maybe it's not the best, but it feels very natural. It feels very real. And so those were some of the considerations. There's also a draw to have a live audience, right? From a YouTube perspective, from a Facebook and LinkedIn perspective, we multicast to those locations, and now we're getting those interaction points as well as the pre-recorded content. Now, just recently, actually, we did introduce another segment of the same podcast where internally we call it our jam sessions, because there's Justin, Andy, and Matt. So the three of us, we've been having these weekly conversations that are a little bit smaller and pre-recorded and still part of the visual lounge, but we decided it's kind of like a series within the umbrella of the podcast. And we do those pre-recorded because we didn't want to do another live. But we go with the ethos that's very similar, is we're not going to edit these. We're going to, we might trim a beginning and end, so we got concise. We might, bring a little bit of our concise thoughts at the very beginning as a teaser. But if it takes us more than a half an hour to do any kind of production work, we don't want to do that. So we're just really trying to say, what's the great content we have? How do we get it out fast and quickly to people? And have it be good enough so that way then we can reach lots of people. And then, your team comes in, Amy, and makes us look really good with, lots of different pieces that feel much more polished than what we did live.
Yeah, well, it's not hard to make it look good because it is good to begin with. So when we have quality
Well, thank
coming
you.
in, it's good to work with such high quality. Now, it's really interesting you say that. So, I guess it gets it on the diary completely. You commit to that live stream. It's something regular. Consistency is something that, it can be such a struggle. So to have that live schedule, and like you said, then it's just one recording, back and forward, back and forward. So again, another time saver. But I think something great that you said was that it's reaching different audiences as well. So you're reaching the people who like to attend a live stream. In terms of that, in terms of reaching different audiences, you guys have a huge global audience, and through the visual lounge you've got the people who will attend live, but then they can watch the recording after. But then you've got the podcast, so they could go and listen to it, the edited version on any Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc. And then there's then also blog post and the social content, teasers and graphics and things like that. So do you find that with all those different avenues of communicating what happened in the live, you are building different audiences in different places that might not necessarily, that live stream listener might not necessarily ever see the blog post, but that's okay as long as people are seeing that message in the different places and the different formats?
Yeah, I absolutely do think we've got different audiences that are tuning into different pieces of it, because we know, we do about 45-minute interviews, depending on the day, depending on the guests, how it goes. And not everyone has time to tune in at 2 p.m. Eastern Central or Eastern time, to YouTube to watch this thing. People are busy, and not everybody listens to podcasts. And sometimes people don't. They're like, I'm not interested in that topic. but then they can still get the snippets and the clips. And so we do definitely see that there are different audiences in different places. They're consuming that information in different ways. And they might change it up on their own, right? They might say like, oh, I really want to listen to that particular topic because that's really interesting to me. I'm going to listen to that as a podcast. But other times it might just be like, oh, I've got a free few minutes. I'm going to tune into this live event because, I want to see what they're talking about, or I have a question about that. So it's definitely playing across those different audiences, which I think is really good because, we do have a big audience. We're very fortunate with the audience that we have, but, we know that even with things like if we were to email blast, not everyone's going to open the email. Not everyone's going to look at any one piece of it all the time. So we just want to make sure that if we have really good information that's really useful, we're putting it in all those different channels. And I think that's been really successful because, again, I don't think not everyone's going to listen to the podcast or watch the video because we don't have time. And so the smaller chunks are really good. I love skimming blog posts, so people can go do that. And I think it just makes that valuable information much more accessible across the board.
Yeah. And would you consider when you are putting out content for the Visual Lounge, is it mainly a B2B or B2C audience or a mixture of both?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of both. I think if you're looking at kind of our audience, we really like the B2B audience in terms of like our tools help businesses primarily, right? You might have individuals who are using them because they find it valuable, and we hear the story all the time, especially about things like Snagit, like, oh, I loved it so much I went home and I had to buy it for myself at home, which is awesome. And so, but inside of those businesses, we still see them as individuals because let's say we're talking a topic about creating training videos. We know in multinational organizations or even small 120 person businesses, or give or take a few people, they probably have someone who's creating training content. And yes, why we want that business to be aware of TechSmith, our products, the things that we do. The things that we're talking about are kind of at that individual level. We want them to be successful because that individual is going to make a video. That individual is going to take a screenshot. That individual is going to need to understand, how do I communicate better with images, with my team, with my colleagues, with whoever. And so why I think ultimately working B2B, those B2C people are, the individuals inside the organizations are really key.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree in terms of, in the B2B world, people who especially work in L&D type functions, creating instructional videos using your tech to help make that happen. They're going to find the content just so useful, and I can, see them being core to the people who are going to really resonate with what you're putting out, which actually leads on to a question that I was building up to asking you, which is about creating instructional videos, because I'm a big believer that the audience that we work with, often the clients that we work with, or people interested in the book and the toolkit, quite often it's about building a personal brand. And I always say that you should be putting out, I think you should put one point of view, so one thought leadership type piece of content out once a week, to really start becoming known for what you want to become known for. And if you're not creating videos that are similar to what we're recording today, so guest type interviews, talking to people about their expertise, but actually putting out something for yourself that is more in a thought leadership capacity, that can be really daunting. That can be quite quite scary to, well, what would I talk about? And just me talking to camera, or just me talking into the podcast. It's quite a scary thought. And so often I advise, is there any kind of instructional content? So, and what kind of questions do you get asked all the time that you could start creating content, just demonstrating that expertise and providing instructional help, guide and leadership towards that? How do you create, instructional type videos? It's just an individual trying to help somebody else in an engaging way. So, what would be your tips for, engaging instructional videos? Because you are such an expert at doing that kind of thing.
Well, thank you for that. First of all, let me just say, I think it's interesting that if someone's making thought leadership content or they're trying to get known for something, these things aren't so separate. First of all, the things that you want to be known on, the way you get known is you be helpful. I think I really truly believe that. Be helpful, help the people understand your point of view, help them to understand how to act whatever it is that you're teaching them. If you're, with you, Amy, if you want people to learn how powerful it is to repurpose content, help people to do that, right? Teach them that process, teach them why they should do that. So I think the first thing to think about in any instructional video is, what is it that I can create that will actually help someone? I say this a lot, and I hope I'm not over repeating it, but it's interesting when we look at the kind of ecosphere of where we can put content. You got Google is kind of the big place. Oh, we got to be ranked on Google. And then it's the biggest search engine. Of course, we need to be there. And then there's YouTube. Wow, should we be on YouTube? Well, YouTube's the second biggest search engine. But I like to think of YouTube as really the biggest how-to engine, right? People are going there to be found. People are going there or going to find answers. And if you can provide those answers in that setting, that is so powerful. So the first thing is really answer the question for yourself. What is it that I can help teach someone? What can I share that will make someone more successful in the space that I want to be known in? Because once you focus in on that, it's going to make everything else that you do with creating your tutorial video easier. So the next thing you're going to do is, once you know this is what I want to do, who are you really talking to? You probably know that already, but get your audience set and then start to say, like, okay, this topic that I have and with this audience, what really needs to be shown or seen or said, and then start formulating that. And the secret to a good instructional video, and really most videos, is to cut. Take out all the fluff, take out all the extra stuff. We don't need to hear your life story. We don't need to hear about your grandma in Italy and how she came up with a recipe if you're teaching cooking. What we need to know is, what are the basic pieces? What are the steps, or what is the information I've got 3 things I want to talk about that relate to one topic. If you're trying to do 4 topics with 12 things each, you're going to fail. So you're going to really hone that down and make it as focused as possible. And from there, we don't have probably time to go into really creating good instruction in general, but think about what's worked for you. What have you enjoyed watching? What have you found helpful? What are the, again, and as you're keeping it focused, what are the pieces of information that you can give that are going to be really valuable, without getting too deep, without getting kind of off in the tangents and the sidebars and all the different things. You just want to keep it really focused and make that video. Now, Amy, I think you'd mentioned whether, should I be on camera? Should I do, here's the truth. It doesn't really matter that much. Now, there's a reason why, if you're doing thought leadership, if you will, why you want to be on camera. Like, I want to establish a relationship with you as the audience. I want you to know me, that you see me, you hear my voice, you understand that I am the person that helped you, because that's going to build brand credibility. But then what you show is, make sure you're showing stuff that relates to answering those questions, solving the problems, or giving the information. And that could be just you on camera, but too much of that probably gets boring. So maybe you use some screen capture, show things that are on your screen. If you're teaching a technical topic or software or something like that, cool. But screen capture could also include like a PowerPoint deck. Now, don't just make a normal PowerPoint deck and say that's good. It should be engaging. You want some movement, you want some motion. The next thing is, you can involve maybe some story or some stock footage to help you keep things moving. That's going to be good too. There's so many variables here. It's really hard to narrow in on, like, oh, just do X, Y, and Z, because it's going to be depending on your message, the style that you want to present. But I think the key thing is, know your audience, know your topic, really focus on the one thing. If you're focusing on 2 things, 3 things, 4 things in that video, you're going to fail. And then just make something that's going to be compelling to watch. Like, look at it and say, would I want to watch this? Is this really answering the question? Is it really helping them? If you can check those boxes, you're off to a good start. However, you can just do a selfie video if that's interesting. Like, it used to be so like, oh, don't ever do vertical selfie videos. But you're going to be on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever. We just see so many opportunities there. The limit, you're limited by your creativity, time, budget, but you can be very simple and make very effective creative content. And there's so many good examples out there right now.
So that's a question I was going to ask you, actually. So in terms of really good examples out there, aside from going and looking at your examples and all the videos that you do, who inspires you, and what other good examples would you point people to, and if you're looking at best practice type videos?
I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here because I don't go and look at formal instructional videos. I actually really enjoy looking at YouTube as a source of that, again, that how-to engine, right? Because here's kind of my take on it. We've had a number of years of YouTube now where, it's getting in its ripe old age of like 15 or whatever. And when some of these folks on YouTube started off, they were just making bad videos. It didn't look good. It wasn't great quality. They didn't know what they were doing. And they've worked for 10 years or more making better videos. And they've gotten really good at making good looking videos. Along the way, something really interesting to me at least happened is they realized the same thing we're talking about today, that help content, being helpful, making tutorial content, that gets a lot of traction. And so not only have they gotten good about making really good looking videos, they've gotten good about making good how-to videos. And they're not, they're not following the kind of the instructional model processes. They're not worried about the academic of things that, research is looking at saying, well, you don't want this. They probably break some rules, like just not intentionally. They just don't know, but it works. And they've been becoming very effective at creating those videos. So, you've got creators like Sean Cannell, you've got Nick Nimmons, you've got, this is a laundry list of folks. You can go check out their stuff. Owen Video, his last name is not really Video, but that's what he goes by. Owen Video's out there making good tutorial videos. Like these creators who have been successful at getting 50,000, 100,000, even 500,000 to 1 million subscribers, they put in the time to learn how to make good instructional videos. Now, the one caveat here is here's a danger. You go look at those and you say, I could never do that. I can't make their videos. My videos don't look like their videos. But that's not the idea. Is go learn about, go watch and see what they did well. And just pick one thing. Say, you know what? I really liked how they had they changed shots a lot. Or I really like that it felt very personal. Or I really like that they showed me the device or whatever it is you're trying to do, and just try to do that one thing well. And then the next video try to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And then eventually you can add these things in. Because remember, where they started and where they are is so far apart that you can't just jump to where they started usually, not without some budget, some time to really learn, unless you've studied film for a while. But you can start, it's okay to start over here and learn from their journey, learn from what they're doing now. And you'll be surprised at how fast I think you can leap forward in your own skills in production.
Yeah, and I think the examples that you gave, it was Sean, Nick, and Owen, wasn't it? They're all, because they teach people how to create great YouTube videos, and they're YouTube experts. They're great people to look at because not only are they demonstrating in their own videos what to do, but you learn at the same time because that's what they're teaching as well.
Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode.
I think you made a good point in terms of, though, don't study every single aspect of what you like and try and deploy every single aspect into your videos at once. And I kind of see it like the analogy of if you're training to run a marathon, you don't just leave the house on day one of training and run a 20 or whatever it's 26 miles or something, do you? You'll run like a few miles and then get the stamina to then add an extra mile on, and then get the stamina to add an extra mile on, and in time you will eventually end up running that marathon. And it's the same, isn't it? You decide the point at which you're going to, I've just done 10k, I'm going to 2 weeks, I'm going to go for 12K, then for and do it that way. Because if you try and do everything, I think it can become demotivating, can't it? Because you don't nail everything in one go. You have to nail things one step at a time, which comes on to my next question, which is for just starting out creating videos, what would you recommend in terms of, firstly, equipment? What kind of gear would be a good starter to just get going without having, too much of a hugely professional setup in the early stages?
Yeah. Before I go over kind of the setup, I just want to mention one thing that to your analogy about the marathon is I think is really important. I actually did my very first live stream. So speaking about doing like these things in 2010, when no one was live streaming, right? Like we actually had a show at TechSmith, we called it The Forge, that we were doing this. And so then it fizzled out because it was, it wasn't my day job. It wasn't my primary focus. I was a manager of some teams. But like, even for me, that marathon, like I learned skills a long time ago that when we said, hey, we're going to do this, it was like kind of getting back on the bicycle and learning how to ride again. It wasn't as hard because I had done these things. And so I think it's a really apt analogy that, you're going to bring in these other kind of skill sets and other things that you've learned and apply them, but don't go run the marathon the first day because you won't make it, like you'll be disappointed. And in terms of gear though, so there's so much about gear. There's kind of an order of operations here. I'd say most people want to jump into like the fancy gear, lights and cameras and cool stuff that they can do. The first thing, I don't care what device you use. You can use your computer to record your webcam. That's fine. It's not the greatest, but it will work. You can record your screen. You can use your smartphone. But the first thing, if you're going to invest anything, go get a microphone. It can be like the microphone Amy has. I have a microphone that's up here. It's called a shotgun microphone that's pointing down. Invest, US dollars, $100, $150. So that's probably, probably a 100 to 200 pound if you're in the UK. An external microphone will make all the difference. We have research from TechSmith that we looked at viewer preferences. And one of the major reasons people will stop watching video is if the audio is bad. If audio quality isn't good, people will turn it off. It doesn't matter if the content's good. It doesn't matter if it's important. They don't want to try to listen through that. It can be shaky, it can be poor quality, but audio's got to be good. The next thing, if you're going to have some more money lying around that you can invest, the next thing I would say is add lights. Don't jump to camera yet. Camera's a whole other beast, but you can get lights again fairly inexpensively, probably a few $100s, a few £100, depending on what you want. I have like 2 light panels that shine on me, and I think I spent $250 on them. I can control the color of them. I can dim them and make them brighter. What the light's going to do is whatever camera you have is going to make it look better. So even if you're using a webcam, having that additional light is really important, because that webcam has a small sensor, and that small sensor is taking in all the light that it can. And if it doesn't have enough, it's going to look dark. It's going to look grainy. So if you've seen your picture not look great before, maybe you don't have enough light. And you want something controllable. Like I've got a really great window next to me. If I open up the window, I can let in a lot of light, but I can't control it. I can't control where it's shining very well. I can't control if a cloud moves in front of the sun, or if it's just always perpetually cloudy, like it has felt for the last few months. And so lighting is the second thing. The third thing, if you still want to keep going, is now, and you've got money, and this is probably the biggest investment, is you can start looking at cameras. Or you could decide never to use a camera and just use screen capture software. I'm very biased in that sense because we do that a lot because of the tools that we make, but it's a good alternative. But if you're going to do a camera, if you move from your webcam built into your computer, smartphones are really good. I mean, we're working with technology that is better than a film camera was, 20, 30 years ago. But again, it needs light. It needs to be steadied. There's things that you need to do to make that look good. I know Apple's done a lot. I know Android has done a lot too, to make sure you can get really good quality. But if you want to spend $1,000 or more, you can go to DSLR. And so it just kind of depends on your comfort level. Now, with each step up of progression of any of these things, it's going to be like, well, how complicated do you want to make it? Because DSLRs, all of a sudden you're dealing with more functionality, which is really powerful, but you have to understand, like, okay, is it going to be in focus? Is it going to Is it going to track my face in focus? Is it, what's the white balance? What's the shutter speed? What are all of these pieces that if you're new to video and you're just trying to figure that out, it's a lot. I have a DSLR camera based on all the work that I do. It felt like it was a good investment. And I spent probably a good week just tweaking settings. And now I just don't touch it. And I'm like, I'm just not going to touch anything because I don't want it to get out of, it's where I like it. I want it to work the way it works. But so those are the things kind of where you can get started. Again, keep it simple, make simple videos. Don't try to get super fancy or complicated. There's a lot you can do if you are just thoughtful, like even a one camera setup, right? Like we won't show this because it's a podcast, but if I change the angle of the camera, I can do different types of looks and feel. I can move the camera closer or further depending on what I'm trying to do. Maybe even do the same thing twice, the exact same words if it's something I've scripted out, and then I can cut between them. Like there's lots you can do with very little, but you just have to kind of think through what's most valuable, and then I really recommend you grow into it rather than trying to kind of swallow the whole pill at once.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the point that you made that, the order and audio being the most important of getting the mic right, 100%. Because a number of times that I have stopped listening or watching something because of the audio, it doesn't matter how good I know it's going to be because it's too frustrating. And just such a wonderful point that go to the lighting before you jump to the camera, because we're fortunate to live in a time where the cameras on our smartphones are so good that you get the lighting right before you invest in the camera. The once you've done the recording, we talked quite a bit about the edit then. So especially when you were saying instructionals, keep them, short, choppy, make sure they stay to the point. It's in the edit. And you mentioned then, record a few times and then edit out the bits that you don't want to keep. So what software, or this is obviously a great question for you at TechSmith, of course, but I'd just like you to explain, what would you, recommend, especially from TechSmith's point of view and what you put out there. What would be the software that would be great for that edit and that way of just getting started? Let's assume somebody is in that early stages. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would not have a job if I didn't recommend
Of course.
Camtasia as a tool. But pragmatically speaking, right? I think Camtasia is very easy. It allows you to do the screen recording, and I actually I have used a lot of other tools, and I used to really heavily favor like Adobe Premiere, which is a very heavy, fully loaded software suite that you can do so much. And frankly, I've just moved away from it because one, I would use like 2%, 3% of it, and I can do the same thing in Camtasia. There's a few small things I can't do that I might go over there every once in a while, but ultimately you want to use a tool that you're going to use, that you want to use, and it's going to do the job that you need it to do. If you're doing something that has tons of production work, lots of edits, lots of extra footage, and you need to like manage multiple pieces, and you're going to color correct, and you're going to do, audio sweetening and all these pieces because you want it to look like it's ready for television or film, Camtasia is probably not your tool, but like Premiere might be. But there's other tools that are intermediate that my bosses always cringe when I talk about. But like, if you're in the Adobe suite already and you have a creative license, you can do like Adobe Rush. It's a very simple editor. I find it to be a little bit limited. If budget's a concern, you're like, I have no money to spend. There are free video editing tools out there. Some of them, one of them is very powerful, and it's complex. Like you're trading kind of the ability of ease for free, but it's DaVinci Resolve, right? You can do these tools and they work well for my purposes because I'm creating instructional videos. I'm not, trying to make high-end television quality, Hollywood quality videos. Camtasia does all the things that I need it to do. And again, it's very simple and easy. But that's not the only tool you're going to need, right? Like you're going to need some other tool to make thumbnails, or you're going to need other tools to help you create the other pieces and assets. You might, want to bring in images if you're creating a slideshow that you're recording, or you just want to add some what we call B-roll, secondary footage that is helping them tell the story to show. You might need a tool to help you make those graphics, or you're going to need some stock video or stock photography that you can grab. And there's lots of places you can do this for free. There's lots of paid places. There's no shortage of stock footage out there. But it's finding the right things and just knowing how that's going to play with the tool that you have. So um, I hope that's a helpful answer. Like, I think that the challenge is there's just so many potential options. But for me, for my company, we use Camtasia because we make it. And it just works really well for our purposes and needs.
And if anybody decides that they will go to Camtasia too, then they have the joy of seeing all of your training videos in the certification program in the academy and things like that on how to use Camtasia as well. So that's an added bonus there too.
Well,
Yeah.
like we said earlier, if you want to be known for something, try to make
Yeah.
it easy for people, try to help them. And that's what we've really tried to do. There's so much content. It's amazing how much you can go and learn without ever, actually ever touching the software. But we also try to provide those other areas, as you said. Like, we know it's not just about using Camtasia, the tool. What about writing a script? How do you storyboard? How do you light your video? How do you get good audio? And if you're in an environment that's not set up for audio, and we have tutorials like those, that's what the Academy is about. We want to help our customers and really everyone get better at making these images and videos.
Yeah. And, there's so many benefits to video content. And, obviously we both are huge fans, and that's what we share a lot with our audience, all about video content. But we're not saying that it's easy as well. As you can, just listening to this conversation, it's not just a case of deciding overnight that you're going to embrace video content and away you go. That there is a lot involved in it, but anything worth doing that gets the kind of results that you get from video content and video marketing, it's not going to be, you put the work in, don't you? And you do have to, there's new things that you need to learn. You will have to invest along the way, your time, your skills, your attention, and all of that. But the benefits can be, so far reaching. And as you mentioned, just from, for example, videos on YouTube being a search engine, you will reach people again and again and again if you're providing help there. But then you can put your videos on your website, on social media, you can repurpose, and it all comes back, circling back to the start of the conversation of, and when we first met each other, you were investing in a new content strategy with the Visual Lounge, new ways to connect with people and more content right at the start of the pandemic. And you wanted to make the most out of it. You put a lot of time and effort into it, don't you? So there's the opportunity to make so much out of video content because there's so many dimensions to it, the visual aspect, the audio aspect too. You can turn that into different content, you can write about it. But if you start with video and live, as you do, like start at the top of the pyramid, I would always consider like live the
Mhm.
top, everything else thereafter, it's just, there's such a big return on investment overall, isn't there, with video content as a strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said, right? Like, you start at the top of the pyramid and it kind of just cascades down. I know we had an internal email that went around, and it was just kind of a recap of, like, I think we work in these kind of increments of 10 weeks. And it was kind of like, here's what was produced in the last 10 weeks. And the amount of content that was tied to that top of that pyramid with the Visual Lounge was incredible. Like, the number of, first of all, you got all your videos. So there's 10 videos over 10 weeks. And from those 10 videos came 10 edited videos. So there's the live videos and edited videos, and 10 podcast episodes, 10 blog posts. And then from each of those, there's probably 2, 3, 4, 5 different pieces of social media. It's like this kind of this exponential waterfall that's just filling the pool. And, I look at what we have a team dedicated to, content, and they're creating, blog posts and social media content, all this other stuff. And they're just like, this is amazing, because it's allowing them to focus on really meaty, challenging, longer kind of content that is also really helpful, because we're able to take one piece of content that's done every week and just pour it out there. So I think you're absolutely right. You've got so many layers of content inside of that video that it's amazingly productive. And then, I mean, to be fair, we leverage Amy and your team to do this with Content 10X, but that is so worth it to us, because it's allowing us to be able to focus on the things that we're really good at. We're really good at getting this content, and our content team's really good about talking about these other things that, may not make sense as a video in an hour. It's like we just published, I'm trying to remember the topic of it, but it's like creating marketing videos, and it's a whole guide, and it's like, I don't know, like a 10,000 word blog post that is just chucked full of amazing information. But if we didn't have this other content, we couldn't focus on that.
No, exactly. Yeah. It just allows you to focus on where you need to focus for each type of message, doesn't it? And make sure that you are putting the right effort in the right places, and thinking about the audience and how would be the best way for them to consume this. So, yeah, it's such a good strategy and such a good approach. I've loved talking to you, Matt. I could talk to you for ages. And when you mentioned that you started live streaming in 2010, I mean, wow, I think there's an episode too, I think, to follow up on just your journey of 2010 to today. God, like, what is it, 2021 now? It's like, it's just mental, isn't it?
Is it 2021? I thought it was like
Yeah, I don't-
2028 or 9 or something. It feels like we've been doing this for last year for 7.
It
So
does, doesn't it? Yeah, like how many years passed by in the last year, God. But I'm very conscious of time and the fact that I think we will have to wrap up. But the final question really is just, if you can go back to when you were started creating live streams. I know things were different then because it's not as it wasn't as accessible, I'm sure, back in 2010. But what would you say would be your advice to your former self, if back then, if you were a bit apprehensive about the whole live aspect, that really helped you embrace it and made sure that you are still doing it today?
yeah, that's a really great question, because I've actually reflected a lot on, I mean, first of all, how fortuitous I was to be able to have those experiences, but we did a lot of things wrong. Like we only went live once a month. We took our summers off. Like it was very like so we're doing like 9 episodes a year, and it was very far in between, and it's hard to build a followership. And I think the advice I'd go back and give myself is stick with it and up the frequency. Yes, it's hard to see the value. It was hard to see the value. That's one of the reasons, like, oh, in 2012, I think we stopped in 2013, because it was like but we weren't doing it well. Like we were doing it too infrequent and taking, but here's the thing. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because it has led me to learn some skills and understand things that I was ready to go in 2020. Like I'd been rearing to go. I'd been waiting to bring it back. And so I would just tell my former self, like, hey, stick with it. Yes, you're not doing everything perfect. Things don't look the way that you want it. It's, not gaining the traction as fast as you think it should. But if you just stick with it, I think we'd be even in a much better position than we are today. We're in a good position now, but I think the lessons would have been even more compounded. We would have had more opportunities to grow followership. And I think it would have been pretty cool to have that kind of thread through. But that's life. Can't really change it.
No, consistency. Don't be sporadic then. Be consistent with the content. Oh, that's wonderful advice. Thank you. So, where would you like people to go if they want to connect with you? What's the best place for connecting?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me personally, Pierce MR, that's PIERCEMR on Twitter, or you can find Matthew R. Pierce on LinkedIn. Just look for Matt Pierce TechSmith. But where I really want people to go, if you can't connect with me necessarily directly, but go to academy.techsmith.com, our free learning platform. Everything out there is free. We've got some really great interviews with people. We've got great tutorials about creating video, and it's not product specific. So even if you're not using TechSmith tools, you will learn something about creating better video. We can guarantee it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we will put the links to all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to speak to you, Matt.
Thanks, Amy. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the Content 10X podcast, then why not hit that subscribe button on your podcast listening app of choice so that you can get updated when new episodes are released. And I'd really, really appreciate it if you could leave a review as well. That really makes a difference for the podcast. Also, please do get a copy of my book, Content 10X, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. It is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content, and it's available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback, and also in audiobook as well. And you can head to content10x.com/book to find all the other places that you can get a copy of my book. And if you would like us to do your content repurposing for you, then we offer a fully end-to-end done-for-you content repurposing service. This is for podcasters and video content creators. We have our Podcast 10x, Video 10x, and also our specific LinkedIn 10x service, helping you to become the leading authority in your industry on LinkedIn. You can find out so much more about our services on our website. And also, please do give me a follow on the social media platforms. I share lots and lots of tips and advice on social media about content repurposing. I'm at Content 10x on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you try content10x.com/LinkedIn, you'll find my LinkedIn profile over there as well. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.